Here in the bare, windswept moors of southern Scotland's border country, conservation is in conflict with itself. New landowners want trees to grow, storing carbon and enhancing biodiversity. But a herd of wild goats is getting in the way. These ragged, wayward animals are a symbol of this land, and they're loved by local people. Culling them has sparked a passionate debate over their future.
Going back to kidding time, which is February, really early on February actually, the new oxygen conservation group started to cull some of the goats.
Last February, a commercial conservation company announced it was culling wild goats which roam on its 11,000-acre estate in the Scottish borders. The land lies on the eastern side of the Langholm and Newcastleton hills.
We knew how many they was going to do, but at that time, oh God, it was that feeling of just dread.
Nicola Hood lives in the Tarras Valley, a gathering point for wild goats west of Oxygen's Blackburn and Hartsgarth estate.
I wanted it to be over, but didn't want it to start. It was just awful. I didn't know the goats that were across there. I wasn't sure what there was, but just the thought of doing it at that time of year when there's mums with little ones or still pregnant or quite heavily pregnant was heartbreaking, frustrating, not being able to do anything to stop it, I suppose.
Oxygen raises money for its conservation work by selling carbon credits from activities such as tree planting. Goats, of course, can and do damage trees.
Everyone was appalled, so there was a block capital headline in the paper, they're going to cull the goats.
Alan Weatherstone edits the Eskdale and Liddesdale Advertiser, a community-owned newspaper based in Langholm.
That caused a huge furore with lots of people screaming and shouting and doing the equivalent on social media and trying to get oxygen conservation to change their mind. The following week, obviously, we'd been contacted so much during that week. The next headline, huge local reaction to news of proposed goat cull. Social media alight and petition raised following an announcement by Oxygen Conservation. I think people's reaction was they've been part of the community for as long as we can remember. The goats technically have been here for hundreds, if some say thousands of years. They are a bit of an attraction. People come from far and wide and drive up onto the moor and look for them, and a very popular sight with the families of goats.
These hills were, until recently, mostly part of the Duke of Buccleuch's huge Scottish landholding, but they've now been sold off. One area of more than 10,000 acres went to a community group. A slightly larger slice to the east went to Oxygen.
In the past, these goats would have been culled by the landowners, and nobody knew. They were less aware of what was happening, but the gamekeepers and the people employed on the moor, it was their remit to keep the population down. They were sympathetically culled by culling the old and the infirm. I think the publicity machine generated by Oxygen Conservation, they said, look, we're going to kill 85% of them. Wrong thing to say, and inflamed everybody locally.
Experts say the goats in these hills are good examples of the British primitive goat, brought here more than 5,000 years ago by Stone Age settlers and no longer kept on farms.
We're out looking over the upper moorland here.
David Braithwaite keeps rare breed sheep near Newcastleton, east across the moors from Langholm.
It's a wet heath, 30,000 acres of hill ground in various ownership, and of which the wild goats here have free roam and free access.
David's also the chairman of the Wild Goat Conservation Trust, which was formed in reaction to the Oxygen cull.
They had claimed that 20 goats had changed into or multiplied into 138 in 2 years, and that was demonstration of unsustainable population growth. In fact, it's a miraculous population growth because 20 goats cannot make 138 in 2 years. But of course, the goats roam this open landscape and move backwards and forwards between different land holdings. People locally were up in arms about this on two grounds. Really, that seemed like an incredible number to be taking out of the herd or the heft. And it also was a very inappropriate time of year. So much so that a petition was started, a local change petition was put together and really got a lot of support locally, 3,835 signatures.
The petition called for that cull to end, and oxygen did stop before reaching its cull target. The company subsequently said it had only shot male goats and females which weren't pregnant or with young, and that it recognised that goats moved across holdings. But another petition was started calling for a change to the legal status of wild goats in Scotland. That's won the backing of some politicians, and it's still before the Scottish Parliament with more than 13,000 signatures. Those raising the petition are concerned that the goats, despite their history, are still not regarded as wildlife by the Scottish Government. Here's David Braithwaite again.
The authorities like to place and describe these animals as feral animals, meaning that they have escaped domestication and become wild. That puts them in a place of no protection. They're not protected by wildlife legislation, they're not protected by livestock and animal legislation. So they're in no man's land. They have no protection and may be culled with impunity at any time of year perfectly legally, and that just simply has to be wrong.
Protection would make culling pregnant and suckling females illegal and would be a big step forward as far as the Goat Conservation Trust is concerned. But now another cull has brought the goat's future back into focus. We're standing now about 15 metres away from a small group of goats. One of them, Nicola, is one that you know well.
Yeah, now this is Tilly, who is now looking at me. So 4 years ago, Tilly was brought to my door. She was only a few days old, actually, by a lady. She was stood on the edge of the road next to her dead sibling. So I brought Tilly in, and I had a rough idea who her mum was. So I decided to keep her in overnight, and then the next day managed to get her back with her mum. So ever since then, I have followed her, watched her have her own babies, and I've just become very fond of her.
This time the cull carried out last autumn was much closer to Nicola Hood's home. It was being done by the managers of the community-owned Tarras Valley Nature Reserve on which she lives.
During the cull, I felt sick, I felt ill. Just the thought of somebody shooting her, because she's used to seeing people, and she would just stand there like a lot of these would and just be shot, really. So, and then when I couldn't find her, I was just that everyday feeling of feeling really sick. This is their home. They should be able to live here. Just hearing the shots was just hard, knowing that they don't get a say, do they?
Nicola's reaction to that cull demonstrates just how strong people's feelings can be for these fierce-looking but endearing animals. For many, they're a symbol of the wild country along the border. But the new cull has attracted far less general condemnation.
Yeah, okay, so here we've got the map. You see Tarras Valley Nature Reserve running down into the lower Tarras. So Tarras Valley Nature Reserve are concerned about the numbers of goats on their holding. They're wanting to have some natural regeneration of woodland. They've undertaken some herbivore impact assessments which say that the goats and other herbivores are actually suppressing the development of the natural regeneration. So they announced that they had estimated between 800 and 900 goats on their land holding. It's a land holding of 10,500 acres, and that they were going to set about reducing that number by 20% over 2-year autumn culls, so 10% per year. So that equates to, if we take the lower figure, 80 animals in autumn culls, year 1, that's this year, year 2 next year. Our stance on that is, it seems a whole lot more considered and measured than what oxygen conservation set about doing. And in the great scheme of things, we actually acknowledge that in the end there will have to be some management of numbers of these wild goats that are out on this open moor. So we actually said that we respected the due diligence and we respected their intention to manage the numbers in the way that they had set down.
The cull has, however, highlighted another concern.
That didn't say, and fell short of saying, we actually supported that action. The reason why we couldn't give full support for that action is no one actually knows what the overall population size is of the wild goats that occupy the 30,000 acres. So the problem there is, if each individual landowner is taking a pot shot at numbers of goats that are roaming freely around the hill, Landowner X might take some out, landowner Y might take more out, and so on and so forth, without understanding the overall population size, then this uncoordinated approach puts the population at risk, because they may end up getting reduced to unsustainable numbers. We could lose the lot. That is the risk.
The Trust has now called for an overarching organisation to coordinate goat management across the animal's range. That's how deer management works in Scotland to ensure herds are controlled but remain healthy. And it's already being done with wild goats in the southern highlands around Loch Lomond. But will all landowners agree? Neither Oxygen Conservation nor the Tarras Valley Nature Reserve wanted to talk to me about their culls, but they don't manage all of the goat range. Lawrence Scott has about 800 sheep on the 1,500-acre Dinley farm on the northern edge of the hills.
All my lifetime, there was never a goat on the place until probably 10, 15 years ago, where there's no billion and honey come in. They bred off them. I've currently got about probably 30 or 40. They're just getting out of control. They're all having twins because there's plenty for them to go at. They've eaten the rose bush, they've eaten everything. They come into the garden in the spring and they strip all the trees, all the buds like. I don't mind a few of them, but they will have to be controlled at some point. The numbers will have to be kept to a certain amount. Like. They're going to affect my livestock if I don't. I've got no choice. Like. We've got two options: we can either shoot them or we can round them up and take them away. It's just, but round them up's a challenge.
Yeah, they're great escape artists.
Yes,
yeah.
Especially stone walls. A stone wall isn't an obstacle to them. A goat does the most damage of anything, any animal.
Yeah.
They eat everything. Like. Up the valley, they've done away with a lot of trees. Like they've stripped the bark off them and they're dead now. Whatever you keep on the hill, you've got to keep them in a reasonable number that they don't affect anything else. Same with my livestock. You've got to keep everything in a balance. If you want everything to be there, they've got to be in a balance. Like. Not wrong with any wildlife, as long as they're controlled in numbers that doesn't affect us greatly.
It's being proposed that there's a group which could coordinate goat management here and sort of keep a balance. What do you think of that idea?
Sounds like bureaucracy to me. They've been managed for years without any problems, so why put a layer of bureaucracy in? It doesn't need to be there. They don't necessarily do what you think needs to be done, and at the end of the day it's your farm and it's your livestock.
For David Braithwaite, goat protection and coordinated management go hand in hand.
Well, the next step is to get some form of protected status for this distinct population. That will then compel landowners to come together collaboratively and collectively to pull together what we are calling a herd conservation management plan. Then we can understand more about the ecology and the science of the population, and we can manage it more appropriately and coordinatedly rather than the ad hoc free-for-all that is currently occurring.
And although Nicola Hood would like to avoid further culls, she sees land managers working together as the best way forward.
That's all I want. Everybody to be on the same. Let's just all look after everything. Not just one thing. Let's all get together and have the same outlook on things, and let's just, look after what we've got.